Welcome to Let's Talk Business. I'm your host, James Price. This podcast has been designed to address business pain points, often neglected, but if dealt with correctly, can really enhance business value and performance. I've had over 30 years' experience in business, and I currently own JPO Business Proprietary Limited, a business valuation, advisory, and transaction firm. We help private business clients across Australia and internationally grow, change, and enhance the value of their businesses. Welcome back to Let's Talk Business podcast. I'm your host, James Price. Today is episode 11, and we're here with Troy Bremner and Christine Emville, business owners of a sports supplements business, International Protein and Prestige Blending. Welcome, guys. Great to see you, Troy. Hi, Christine from Texas.
Hi, James.
Lovely to have you on board. How are things in Houston?
They're good. Yeah, like I say, it's getting into summer here, but it's not too bad. And it's all fun. It's just different pace, different lifestyle.
Yeah, lovely to have you on board. And Troy, great to be in your house at the International Protein Hub on the Gold Coast.
Now, look, we always enjoy having people on site. We're fairly proud of what we've done here, and we don't often get a chance to show it off.
Well, I'm fairly proud of you guys as well, because I let our listeners in on a little secret. I think, firstly, you guys are clients of ours. I think we've actually provided you some advice and valuations a couple of times over probably a decade or more, and I'm a customer of yours. I tend to wind up with a tub of WPI pretty frequently. So there you go.
Yeah.
But look, where did it all start? Like, I'm very interested to look. Let's get straight into it. Where did all this start, guys? Can you help me understand where did the business International Protein Prestige Blending, where did it commence?
Well, International Protein started quite a little bit before Prestige Blending. And it started back in early 2000 when sports supplements were just becoming a thing. There weren't really dedicated stores that sold sports supplements. But as a food technologist and a bodybuilder at the time, I was getting asked by a lot of people to develop supplements for them. So that was kind of what I was doing. I was doing contract work, working with different companies, developing protein powders that they wanted, advising them on different, type of sports supplements. Because of my success and my notoriety as a bodybuilder, people wanted to, know what I was using or taking. And as a food scientist, I knew how to develop the products. But the thing that I found was I had to develop other people's products. And if it was what I wanted, it would be too expensive. And people would say, oh, no, we want your dream formulation. And then they would destroy it and say, oh, it's not viable to actually make. So then people started saying to me, well, why don't you do your own thing? Why don't you do your own protein range? And we Troy and I, we talked to a few different people and they encouraged us some more. And so finally that was, I guess how it got started was that, I had all of the ingredients and, Troy's a good salesperson. He had all the contacts and everything. So that was pretty much how we got it going, because we were right into the industry at the time. So we knew all the people who had the gyms and the stores and I knew how to make the product. But, the one thing I guess that we had the ability to do was that I could still create the quality that I wanted, but we just, kind of made a decision to not want to make as much money at the start because we wanted to be able to make those products affordable.
Very interesting. So you were both in bodybuilding in the early days, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And did that cement your interest in this field, or was it, in your case, Christine, I guess it was the food technology side that kind of enhanced that, right? Was that what you initially studied coming out of school? Yeah.
So it all kind of happened at the same time. I was looking at different things. I've always been, science related, and I had started bodybuilding just during like my final year of high school. So I was looking at things like sports science and I didn't even know about food technology. And then I saw this course called food technology, and it was perfect because it brought nutrition together. It brought, how you, flavor a food, how you manipulate a food to actually make it last longer. So you're not, fresh product obviously is not viable commercially. So that, when I saw all of that, it was, kind of tapped in with my interest in bodybuilding and wanting to know more about nutrition and performance nutrition and how to feed the body properly. That was all kind of coming together at the same time. And then interestingly, also a lot of the ingredients that we use now, the whey proteins, they were actually just becoming commercial at that same time as well. Prior to, the early 90s, milk powder was kind of, that was really what it was, what sports supplements were made out of.
As far as it goes,
powder. And it was really with the introduction of whey protein concentrate. It would have been in the early 90s, and then the isolate followed after that. And I remember learning about those at uni, these revolutionary new ingredients that were actually like a byproduct of cheese making. And in chill sports nutrition, they weren't really that useful. And they actually became useful because people wanted to, make a cheaper version of eggs, so like whipping protein and stuff. So there was all these other reasons for having them. But then as a bodybuilder, we had the nutritional want for them. And that's what I'm saying. We kind of got into it when there was a few companies going, but everything was selling through health food stores. Some equipment stores were selling product, but they weren't, and some gyms, but there wasn't now like there's dedicated sports supplement stores.
And I want to come back to those, but Troy, how did you sort of go beyond the bodybuilding piece and get into this business? Well, you had the gift of the gab by the sound of it. You were the salesperson.
Probably not so. Look, I suppose anything you do enough, you should become good at. So I wouldn't say the first 50 sales that I ever did, I probably was quite polished or knew how to get it across the line or even had a strategy. But you soon learn, what works and what doesn't work. We were lucky, and there wasn't a strategy in this that we seen the gym culture in Australia exploding to the level that it has now. When I say the gym culture, people think of bodybuilders, but anybody who's a member of an Anytime Fitness, Snap Fitness, anything like that will see themselves as a hard trainer.
Yes.
So even the people that sit on the treadmill 3 days of a week for 25 minutes will now use a sports supplement. So back in the early days, there might be 5 gyms in the whole of Melbourne. Now there'd be 5 gyms in almost every suburb in Melbourne.
That's right.
So, we were lucky our brand grew at the same time that the whole industry grew, but we were lucky probably to grow a little bit quicker than the industry, with that. So
yeah, well, you say lucky, but as I said, I think it's because we had solid formulations. Of course, I'm
100%.
But like our formulations resonated with people. In terms of, there was WPI, plenty of WPI on the market, but when we did amino charged, just a couple of little things that I put in there to make it more specific for recovery. So again, using my knowledge of what amino acids do what in the body, and kind of fortifying it a little bit with those particular like glutamine and arginine, which are good for recovery, making it a better product than just the WPI on its own. And that product for us, like that almost was really where it tipped from us being a brand to just being like, that's when we really had all of our growth, wasn't it? Because we didn't have that product initially.
When I say luck, James, I mean, we sat there and we did have 5-year strategies, what we had to sell each month, how much we wanted to grow. So we had some strategies around that. And when you're a fledgling business person, those strategies are pretty rudimentary, if you know what I mean. But still, we had some strategies. Part of that strategy wasn't another, 14,000 gyms are going to open in Australia in the next 10 years, and there's going to be another 300 brands, and this is just going to explode. But we definitely had strategies and where we thought the business would go. I suppose the luck I say is we wouldn't have thought the business would have gone to quite here because we hadn't anticipated that huge amount of growth.
Yes.
Where now, Australia per head of population is in the top 3 countries in the world for people who have gym memberships. Obviously, people have gym memberships, normally use supplements. So, we're sort of, that's when I say there's a little bit of luck in that. We were going to run a successful business from our plans, but not quite this successful, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. I just want to, I want to tease that out quite a bit there's a range of different angles, right? Like, why do people use supplements? Are you just based in Australia? No, you're not, but you were back in those days. But before I do, did this all come from your passion around bodybuilding,
100%.
guys?
And nutrition and bodybuilding, as I said, wanting to perform better, but also like one of our core values is that we had products that tasted good, because back in the old days, supplements were pretty hard going. I'd been sponsored by a number of different companies, and I had to always kind of mix them down with other things to make them palatable. They had put a lot of focus on what the nutritionals were, but not necessarily how they tasted or whether someone could actually consume them. And I would spend, 9-10 months a year on a very, very strict diet, and this would be the only thing I'd have to look forward to. So it had to taste good. So we kind of had this thing where we wanted to say, people will say this tastes good, not for a protein powder. It actually just tastes good, period. Like that had to be, one of our things. Give it the kid test, give it to a little kid and see how they react to it, because they'll be very honest that they either like it or they don't like it. So we wanted to make sure that, what people were consuming was hitting that mark as well. It was affordable for them. It hit their macros. It was flexible, that they could use it at different times throughout their comp prep and not have to switch from this product to that product. They could kind of like change the ratios of them, but it had to always taste really, really good. And that was one thing that has gotten us into so many stores, like made it a lot easier when, Troy's talking to people, because the first thing they ask is, how does it taste? And then to be able to back it up and then have customers come in and say, yeah, I'll buy that again. Because you can sell anything once to somebody, but if it doesn't live up to what their expectation is, they're not going to come back and buy it again and buy it again. And I think that's where we've created a lot of loyalty, because people that know what's a good formulation, and then people who just take a supplement, taste it and go, wow, like this is not,
this is pretty
I was
good.
expecting it to be a bit ordinary, but this is really good.
So did the bodybuilding thing give you added credibility and also added knowledge to come up with the point of difference that turbocharged the business? Do you think,
I actually think it did, because not so much now. Most people who work in a supplement store do actually train, but they're not hardcore trainers. But if you go back 20 years, you walk in and even the person who maybe didn't look like a hardcore bodybuilder was a very hardcore trainer. So I suppose being able to connect with them, saying, hey, well, this is why we use the supplements, this is what we find, and have that back and forth dialogue, definitely gave us credibility over somebody who walked in, business suit, pot belly, and says, here's the margin, but I couldn't really tell you anything about the actual product that you're using. And the person says, well, I find this and I find that. And the guy goes, I've never used it, mate. I don't go to the gym, but I definitely want to make money off you. I use it, within reason, we could be, hey, we're happy to come and have a training session with you if that helps, stock the brand. Christine can come and give seminars. At the time, she's probably the most winning Australian bodybuilder, female or male. So there's a lot of credibility in that, but you could also back it up with a lot of good nutrition knowledge that come out of a textbook, not bro science. So there was more knowledge on that, where people would go to the seminar and go, oh, that actually made sense. It wasn't just a marketing waffle that couldn't be backed up.
Right. So that's interesting. So your bodybuilding period and success, what did it give you as individuals that you've used in running the business? And I'm not talking about the products here that you've just talked about in terms of the aspects, but I mean, there's a lot of discipline to be an elite bodybuilder.
Look, you've probably answered the question there. It gives you discipline and consistency.
Is that?
And you'll see, regardless of motivation, which can come and go, if you're consistent, you'll normally beat people. Because when things become hard, or they don't get the reward that they wanted that exact minute, they tend to give up, or they show it in their personality when they're dealing with people. If you're just consistent to the pattern of what you're meant to do, and you do what you're meant to do every day, you tend to succeed. As we said, good business is really very similar to good manners. If somebody rings your phone, return their call.
Yeah.
Like, it's not hard, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So consistency. Yeah. And Christine, do you have a view on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely the consistency, because it takes work, as you know. Like, it's not something that you kind of set in motion and then you can leave it and then it just goes off on its own. It is that ability to just, even when it's not fun or you're having to deal with difficult situations, that you just attack it. Like, you don't avoid it. You just, and that's, you know, the thing with, as I said, like with the food, the training, everything, at some point, the thing that you love can become the thing that you hate the most, because you have to do it, but you still do it. And that's the thing, you know, it might be, something goes wrong in that it comes later than what you expect, and you have to always be thinking of ways around that. And I think that's part of it as well. When you're prepping for a bodybuilding competition, it isn't set and forget. Like, whilst the consistency's there, you have to be able to dynamically adapt to whatever is, you know, maybe your weight's not coming off the way that you think that it should. Maybe the prep isn't going the way. You have to then assess it and make changes to keep going to get to where you want to go. So the same thing in business. Things don't always go smoothly, but you don't just sit there and go, oh, okay. You go, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix the problem? How are we going to solve this? And Troy's very much like that as well. Like, we don't sit there and point blame if something goes wrong. We're like, what's the solution? Like, how do we keep going? What's the way around this? Like, maybe we can't go straight through. Maybe we have to go a little bit sideways and then come back here. But we're always looking for the way to move forward.
One thing I notice with business is people run off ego and motivation more than they run off a plan.
Yes.
So if you try to separate yourself from that, you also find that your stress comes down.
Yeah.
So if you go, this is the process, this is what we're doing, and you worry about selling the first item, not selling the first 100,000 items, and you just work on that. And that's really been the way we've ran the business from the start. We launch a product, and I need to penetrate 30% of the market. I'm like, I need to get one shop to take it.
Yeah.
Then he takes it, then I get 5 shops to take it within an hour. Then the next hour, they go, has anybody taken it? I'm like, yeah, mate, I already got 5 on the first hour. And they go, oh, well, I better stock it then. Within a week, we've got 70% penetration of our market spread. And everybody goes, how did you get that? I said, I got the first one.
Yeah, so it's an incremental process. Yeah.
Where I think people put a lot of stress and find it hard to step off the cliff, if that makes sense, because they go, how do I sign the first 100 accounts? I go, let's not worry about 100 accounts, sign the first account, and then you sign the second. By the time you signed 10 or 12, you'll have that little bit of confidence, and somebody will go, well, how are you going? You go, well, I already got 12 behind me. And somebody go, oh, well, I will, you know, because people like to connect themselves to somewhat success.
There's a mental strength in there that though, isn't it? Like, it's a bit like bodybuilding in a sense. And I haven't been a bodybuilder, but my sense is there's a lot to do with the process and sticking to the process.
Yeah.
And just step by step working through.
And that's really the way the business goes. And that's part of our success in export. I will find a guy, and sometimes the first order will be the export documentation cost me more to do than he's actually than a profit I've made off the order. Yeah. But I'll have a 5-year strategy. We'll go over to the country. Christine will land and educate him about the products. When he's confident, then he gets excited. I'll go over and say, well, this is really where your margins run. This is how you should approach your shop. And we'll actually help build that importer up until he's got the confidence and he grows. And people will say, oh, how do you get this guy who takes 40-foot containers every six weeks off you? I go, his first order I lost money on.
Yeah.
But I didn't lose money without a strategy. Like, it's not like I'm just pot-lucking, grabbing people. A lot of people I speak to go, and I say there's a danger with letting accountants run a business. Yeah. They go, I went to my accountant and it wasn't at the right margin. I go, but did you have a strategy to where you were going to get it to the right margin? Like, that's an investment in trying to get somewhere. But a lot of people just can't take that risk, or they won't.
Yeah, I like that in a sense that you're working to a plan, but you've got a longer term process, and you recognise that there'll be some ups and downs through that process, but you've got to know where you're angling to. I guess.
That's it. Yeah.
I mean, how much of bodybuilding is physical versus mental?
I mean, I wish you could quantify that, but the one thing that I've learned, probably more from retiring from bodybuilding and then seeing a friend of mine train people, it's your success is dependent on your mental state. You can have the best genetics, you can have the best trainer, you can have everything at your fingertips. But what I would see his clients do, I would straight away know that one's going to be successful, that one's not, based on the reactions and the interactions that they were having with him and the things that they were saying. Because some people have lost mentally, like a week into it. You already know that person's not going to make it because the excuses come in, the self-doubt. There's a lot of that comes into it. So I would say that 100% the actual finishing and getting to the end point and getting how you should, if you don't have someone who's very actively propping you up and basically pulling you over the line mentally, which takes a lot of energy from that person, then you're not going to succeed. So everyone can train, everyone can diet and do all of that, but then obviously sticking on the diet and sticking on the training is all contingent on the mental strength. Because as I said, some days the thing that you love is the thing that you hate the most. And to get up and know that that's what you've got to go through, you've got to get through that training session, you've got to get through that day, you've got to have to feel hungry, all of those things which aren't that pleasant, but the end point is worth it. And talking yourself into that and the self-talk to get into that, the mental side of it, if you don't have that, and business will be the same. I've been to a few different, kind of business coach type scenarios, and the first thing that they do with a group of people is actually set them up to believe in themselves, because they know that all of the stuff that they want to teach is irrelevant if that person has the fear of for fear of success, fear of failure, fear of them not actually being able to do it, or having that wrong mental state. Nothing can progress past that.
So confidence is a big thing, right?
Huge. Self-belief, confidence.
An ability to take risk.
Yeah.
It's very easy for, like I see, or all of us would see people every day when you think, whoa, thank God this person has got more ability to take risk and belief in themselves, or they'd roll over the top of me in my business. But they don't. So they normally manage another business, so they get a good wage, but all the risk is on the business owner. So and it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think did you see the study where they went over about 40 years and they get kids and they say, if you eat one chocolate now instead of 5, we'll give you 10 in a day's time, and those sort of studies. And as years have gone on now, it used to be a 50-50 split in the 1950s. Now it's a 90-10 split. The kids that say, give me the one chocolate now. Yeah. Because they won't wait, they won't sacrifice. And that will travel through to people who are successful at business, people who are willing to take risks, people that have 10-year strategies. Yeah. Obviously that goes on if they're already predisposed to having to have an instant reward and not seeing the long-term reward. That's going to travel with there, because that's part of their makeup and personality. That will travel with them, and we'll see a difference in that. With top sports people are successful at business. We might go back in the 1950s, and it was very common for businessmen, to start a business and be successful. Now that'll be less common, more bankruptcies, things like that, because people go, I want that instant reward now. I want to take a lot out of the business. I want a lifestyle, all of those sort of things. Where you go, well, you start a business, you chain to it for the first 10 years and your lifestyle is probably worse than your manager's.
It's tricky, isn't it? It's like managing your own expectations in a way.
100%.
But also having an inner feeling of wanting to continuously improve and being prepared to put yourself out there. I mean, you guys must both take risks right from the start, otherwise you wouldn't have achieved the levels of performance that you've achieved, let alone what you've done in business, obviously. I mean, but did that come from an early childhood, or was there an event in your lives that allowed you to free up your mind around taking risks necessarily? What
Christine,
or is it just your makeup? What is it?
Christine would have to speak for us. For myself, I would say I have learnt with this business. If I had to do today what I do today 24 years ago, I don't think I would have had the mental capability, the understanding of forward thinking that to actually do it, because it's not something I'd been exposed to. I'd come from being a trade person and working for somebody.
Yes.
So that might have been something they were thinking about. I was thinking about how much does it actually cost me to do it? How much can I get out in a day? You know, all of these sort of things. So I suppose I have learnt with the business.
Yeah.
And luckily in one way, probably through not having a master's or anything else, the business has taught me, and people's interactions with, you know, everything from small businesses to multinationals, I've learnt a lot from those interactions.
Seeing others do it and seeing how that impacts your business.
So I've sort of got my own style, which somewhat works for me. You know what I mean? And I justify that in the back of my head. Somebody goes, why don't you get a degree? I go, then aren't I doing the same business approach as another 100,000 people? Therefore, all of us are doing the same approach. Who wins? Mine's slightly different. So therefore, I seem to be winning at the moment.
Very good. Christine?
Yeah.
So when I speak to my family, it definitely didn't come from there because they are so risk adverse. I think it was just being a curious person. I'm really, really curious. So every business that I had worked for, like obviously post getting my food science degree, I worked for Uncle Toby's. So I worked from like a big company and actually worked my way down into smaller companies. And I found that the smaller the company, the more I got to see everything that was going on in business. So it was such a great learning thing working for other people, but being exposed to every facet, from the purchasing side of things to the planning and scheduling side of things, you know, the financial side of things, working, you know, crunching the numbers, working out the margins, working out everything that you needed to run the business, and getting exposed to that in a very like small companies of say 5 people. A large company, you see all of the big corporate you know, different departments, and you see all the politics, and you see how the kind of like the overall thing meshes, but you don't see the little dynamic, what's going on in each department. And I guess that, you know, working for a small business and seeing the stress of, you know, needing to make the sales, people, like if a person pays you late, the impact of that. If material comes in late, the impact of that. So I think that was it. To me, it's all just a learning thing. I'm not overly attached to the money, so I guess if it's there, if it's not there, I don't know. I call myself the engine room person. I like the actual machination of business and just things running and everything. So And I just don't think that it, like I say I'm very cautious. So when we make a decision to make a move forward, I believe that we've crossed, you know, we've crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, and we're not actually taking a risk in my mind.
Yeah, I love that. But, you know, and I think it's, you know, in a smaller business, you know, I've worked in both, and so I understand for what you're saying there. Sometimes in a corporate business, you know, risks and failure are treated, you know, very poorly. Where in a smaller business, you know, they're just part and parcel of figuring out a way to do things and improve. And risk is often thought of as a negative word, but you guys didn't raise it as a negative word.
No.
You raised it as a positive word.
Well,
and, you know, I think that's...
The good thing about living some of your business life in risk factors, many people won't. So you're competing against a much smaller field.
Yeah. So you've just enhanced your market.
Correct. So, yeah, if you're only living in 100% what's safe, there's a lot of multinationals living in that probably have bigger marketing budgets, bigger reach, and a little more power.
Yeah.
And going back to, you know, people wanting to do business with people, you might, you know, inevitably in our field, most companies that go into supermarkets tend to go bankrupt. But everybody wants to be in a supermarket because it's seen as the big ticket item. We're like, let's go the other way, you know. But so you have to be a little bit careful about the sector that you want to compete in, because you might be flooded by the bigger players. It's not that the guy that you're going for is going to make any more money off them, but he wants to be seen to be connected with them because it's an ego thing and a thing for his business.
Yes.
So, you know, to say, you know, I supply Coles or Woolworths means a lot when you're bragging to people.
Yeah.
You know, I supply so-and-so out the back, even though you make 3 times more money off him, doesn't mean much to most people. So people will, for some unknown reason to me, always go Coles or Woolworths. And I'm like, not there's anything wrong with that, but I'm like, but how much did you make of them? And the facts get shady as you start asking facts and figures.
I know, it's fascinating. I could tell a story because it's fresh in my mind. We were doing due diligence on a company for one of our clients only last week. And we got the financials from this company, and they were basically break even at the bottom line. And so we thought we had to ask some additional questions of the company we were doing the due diligence. So we said, look, can you tell us who your clients are and give us a feel for the size of your billings and what have you? And they were sort of a little bit, how dare you ask us that detail? We're a legitimate business. And the answer was, well, we've got Woolworths and Amazon as clients. And they were feeling as a business as if that was the blue chip of the blue chip, right? But in terms of, a return for their risk,
that's it.
It wasn't showing. And so, I guess you're saying be discerning, take risk, but think about the risk you're taking and what impact it's having. Yeah.
And that's, we do look at the different angles of things, the different risk factors, and that's what I'm saying. Like, when we make a move, I believe that we've really looked at everything, so we know what we're in for. We know we're not kind of just blindly jumping into something. That's I guess, and that's when we started Prestige Blending from International Protein went there. We were at a state where we weren't just starting a factory and hoping for the best. We knew we could cover costs. We knew that we had the volume. We knew all of those factors. We also knew that we could actually have a little bit more margin than having an external company making the product, because we were at a certain volume. And I think I remember saying to Troy, like, once we're at X number of dollars per month, I can come onto the company full time. Like, I can start to take a wage, because that point there is where my wage will be covered from what I'm earning from working for another company. And that was, at that point when, Prestige came along. And so all of those things, like I say, I don't just pray. I don't just kind of like have a dream and pray. There's a lot of calculation that goes in the background to make sure that we are safe and secure, to the point where other people maybe do take the step sooner. But we're at that point, and we say, yep, okay, now we can go to the next point. And then, and I think from that point, we actually grew very, very quickly, because we were back in control of the quality of our product and what we were putting out. And that was, one of the reasons for Prestige Blending was not only to obviously make money that we were giving to a contract manufacturer, but to control the quality of the product, because we didn't feel that they were always doing the best by us. Yeah, and it was something that we had kind of talked about, but when our volume wasn't big enough, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
That's very interesting, and you probably led us into an opportunity to reveal for our listeners the size and shape of your group. I might start the discussion, but I'll let you take over, because I'm sure you're better at communicating it. But you effectively got two companies, one being Prestige Blending, which is the manufacturing business.
Yep.
And then the second is International Protein, which is obviously your major brand, but it's also your distribution and sales business. So, how long have you been going? 24 years now?
For International, is it 20?
We launched in 2001.
2001.
Yep.
And then Prestige came after that. When did Prestige come about?
So International started in 2001 and Prestige started in 2009.
Yeah, and help me understand, what does it look like today? Maybe start with the sales and work back, or vice versa. I'm just interested to know size and shape and what you cover. I mean, you obviously started domestically, but yep. You're a whole lot bigger than that now.
Yeah, so when it comes to the brand International Protein, we now export to 21 countries. And when I say export, we have a couple other little countries which I don't really include, because they might order 1 year, might not order for a year. So there's, but they're 21 active countries. Wow. In some of those countries, we're classes in the top 3 brands of sales for those countries. Wow. So, for us, that's like a big, I suppose, a big pat on the back to ourselves, because we don't pick a big distributor because a big distributor doesn't want to pay the price for our product. We have to pick the distributor who believes in our product.
Yes.
So you're normally picking a little guy who just loves the product, he hustles hard, and we see that distributor grow with us. And then when you get reports back from the countries that online sales, you're in the top 3 sales and things like that, you go, wow, that's amazing seeing who we are and who you were, that now together we'll become this. In Australia, we'd be in the top 3 brands, with Rule One and Optimum Nutrition, and us would round out the top 3.
Both international brands. We're the top Australian brand.
You're the number 1 Australian brand, yeah?
Yeah, when it comes to volumes of powders, you definitely got guys like Masashi and stuff like that that do the route trade, BPs, bars, all that. We don't have any bars. We don't compete in that range. When it comes to powders, we would consider ourselves, with our knowledge, to be the whale.
Yeah.
Christine can probably speak on the PB figures a little bit better.
We obviously started out with about 2 or 3 customers because we do have some. It isn't just Troy and I. That some other people came in, but they're silent part of the business. We now have about 38 customers. So like that for us, because we did literally start the business to support the people that went in it. As we said, we wanted to, cut out, I guess, that money that we were paying to a third party and improve the quality, because the other brand that came in with us, they were suffering the same thing. Their manufacturer was not doing the best by their quality, giving them product in time and everything. So we had started it just with that to service ourselves in mind. But obviously, at some point we realised that the risk of that was great and made a conscious decision to actively take on other customers. And so that plus export. So we started out, we were just making domestically, but with international wanting to do the export, we had to make sure that our manufacturer could do the export. Hence, we went through the process to get all the accreditations. And I think we now hold we obviously hold the one for the UK, the one, to export to every other country. Europe has its own special thing. But also China has a very special listing number as well. And that is something that's very, very highly sought after, to be able to export dairy back into China. So that is another thing that we have, which I think very few privately owned companies have in our dairy space, and particularly in the supplement space. So that sets us apart again. But to be servicing 35 different companies, or 38, because it keeps on growing, and to be able to make sure that we don't make the same product for 2 different companies. That's another thing that is very, very special about us, is we don't just slap a label on a generic product and white label. Like literally, if someone comes to us, they have to have we will help them with it, but they need to have a unique formulation, unique flavouring system. We won't just copy across what other people are doing. We obviously use our knowledge, but every single product is different. So that's a lot of different products for the factory to have to manage. But it's a decision that we made, that we wouldn't just be peddling out anything to anybody.
But a little bit of the understanding of how Christine and I think when it comes to our business strategy. The export come up. First, there was a little guy in Qatar who wanted to import us. And from that, we sort of had a thought and a discussion, because when you're a small brand and you're only bought by, let's say, addictive personality, hardcore trainers, winter, summer, Christmas Day, doesn't matter, you sell the same, because those guys, or those girls and guys, will eat it every day of the week. As you get bigger and bigger, you get more of the fringe elements. They go on a diet. Summer comes, you get a huge sales peak. Winter comes, you get a drop. So as all of our employees become full-time employees, we're like, oh, these winters are getting a little bit slim for work with such a large staffing. Summers are crazy. How do we really start to level out some of these sales? And we come up with the strategy, let's export the countries that are in their summer when we're in our winter, because in winter they have a real drop and in summer they have a huge lift, and hopefully within reason, that will stabilise what we bring in. So all of our full-time staff are busy all year round rather than watching people sweep the floor. Yeah.
So that's how the export piece
That isn't
really
exactly
started.
how the export started. As I say, we had a country who approached us first, seen us at a fitness expo and liked the product.
Right.
But the theory of then going after countries what took large volume that were on the other side of the equator from us actually come from trying to stabilise workflow year in, year out. So staff were busy all the time because, middle of winter here, you say to staff, you want to take a couple of weeks holiday? They go, not so much. I want to take it when you're real busy in summer.
Yeah, understand.
So, yeah.
I'm wondering, like adding the manufacturing piece to your business versus having a contractor make your product, which you said was essentially what was happening before. Did that add a lot of complexity for you guys to manage?
Yes.
Was that a challenge? Like, how did you deal with all of that?
It is a challenge because the staffing becomes a lot larger. You're dealing with a lot of technical staff. When you're dealing with sales reps on the sales side that are small, they're orientated by commissions, money, dominating other sales reps. So you don't have to work too hard to say, go out there and try to sell more product because that's the way they're built. The larger your technical staff, you realise there's a lot of huge amount of education and smarts in those people, but there's not a lot of get up and drive. So there can be a lot of, I sent an email, never heard back, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. You go, look, it's cost us this much with this project to get to this point.
Yeah.
We'd really love to see it go into the factory and start to earn some coin back off this. And they go, but I sent an email 3 weeks ago. Maybe the person read it, maybe they didn't. So it's not that they're more challenging, but they're different because you don't want to micromanage staff.
Yeah.
But then on the other account, there's a little more checking and pushing to say, and there's a little more education in if you can get them to be really active at their job. They see the wins of it going into the factory. They walk into a shop and see something they've developed on the shelf and they get excited by that. And you go, there you go. And that sort of spurs them on. But there's a little bit of a hard push to get them up to that level, and especially with universities these days. Yeah.
But the thing with going into manufacturing, and it's funny because I was like, oh no, what are we doing? Because I came from manufacturing, that's where I had worked. Like as a food technologist, I was always working in the new product development section. I wasn't working in the quality section necessarily, but I understood what went into manufacturing. So, and I was just like, oh no, because, but having said that, to me, because of some of the places that I have worked, dairy companies, biscuit manufacturing, obviously Uncle Toby's as well, snacks and muesli bars and cereal and stuff. Powder blending is incredibly simple from the point of view of the things that can go wrong. So trust me, they will find a way that make things go wrong, people in the factory. But it's basically, what goes in is what comes out. You're not having to worry about losses of cooking and factoring for loss in lines and, a whole bunch of things like that. So from that point of view, I felt relatively confident and safe. And obviously when we started, it was also very low technology. It was a blender and everything was hand packed. So, because machines can be very daunting when they run well, they run beautifully. When they don't run, you're dead in the water. Like, you're sitting there either watching products spew out everywhere or nothing's happening and nothing's being produced. And that's a lot of the experience that I had when you're looking at high-speed automated muesli bar lines or, think when something goes wrong and you've got product made and you've got nothing that you can do with it, you literally lose all of that product because it changes and stuff. So those type of things we didn't have to worry about. Like powder can always be saved for another day because it's just dry powder. Nothing bad's going to happen. So from that perspective, and that manufacturing, I didn't feel too stressed. Like it was very, very manageable. Troy has a manufacturing background, so he understood what was going on in there, and then it was just a matter of designing the processes that went around that, and then implementing. Some of the hardest times for us have been the big growth phases when all of a sudden you have to adapt how the workflow is happening, how your materials are coming in. Those are the times when we've had, probably the hardest, and it's not at the start, it's been, X number of years in and, repeat it again when you have that, like for some reason it just doesn't go in a nice little growth curve. It goes exponential like that, and then it kind of has another jump.
So what's your mindset in a growth phase like that? Like how do you work through that? Because it's a bit weird, isn't it? You think a growth phase, that's positive, but it comes with its own challenges, yeah?
Well, it does, and you have to realise, quite often the people that you rely on to have a lot of emotional intelligence about the way you run the business and the decisions you make in a growth phase when they've been working hard and they're under stress, that a little bit of emotional intelligence can waver a little bit. So when you say, I didn't buy this $500,000 bit of equipment that produces stuff 5 times as quick because we didn't have the work to fill it, so we'd switch it on once a month.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a great investment. Now we're getting there. Let's just lock in a couple of contracts and know this stuff's going to market for a couple of months, and we will put this equipment in, and then things will become easier. And they lose that little bit of sight that as a business you don't, unless you're a big multinational and can budget it, you don't invest in things that you don't need. So unfortunately you have to wait until the need is there and then make the investment, and that creates a certain amount of stress on a lot of staff. Some staff can see that end bit because they've been with us long enough to say, yeah, this always happens. Then, some auto fillers rock up that pack it and this happens and life becomes easy again. Other staff we really struggle with, or we don't struggle with, but they struggle with, because you say, look, I've ordered the equipment, it's in a container, it's coming here and it'll take us about a month to commission. That's too much, do it today. I'm like, well, the equipment's not here today. What we're not having a great sort of interaction here. And, and also in business, and I say this to most business owners, there will be what I call watershed moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you'll have and I say, 5 to 12 employees, you're a family. You eat together, you catch up on the weekend, they all pull together, they understand your business, and if they're not involved in a process but they can make a process better just through their hard work, they will, because that's it. As you get bigger, you get fewer of those people. There's little departments, each department works for itself and not as a unit, for the business. It can become a little bit harder. So as your business gets busier, you get more accreditations and there's more requirements to always be 100% perfect, because the bigger contract you got, they're not going to pay you if there's a problem.
They're relying on you.
You will lose people that are highly capable and can do the job, but they don't want that level of stress. And you would understand what I'm saying in all businesses. Somebody does a job for 15 years that they don't have to do a double sign off to say it's right. Never makes a mistake. You get an accreditation because you want to go into a certain area of business. You say, now you have to sign for that. They go, I'm quitting, I don't want to sign for it. Okay, it's the same job you've done for 15 years. Yeah. You've never made a mistake, just sign the paper. And they go like, no, that's too much stress. So businesses will have watershed moments where unfortunately you lose staff that you think are highly capable, but they just don't want to be that capable.
In terms of continually improving and going to the next level.
Of course, because we could have stopped improving our processes, businesses and accreditations really 5 months after we opened. We had an export license, we had everything we needed. But even now, with HACCP, we're looking at the next stage above HACCP, just as a continuous improvement to our business. We don't need it for any reason. There's no benefit to us apart from we see implementing a slightly more stringent, higher level of something means everybody has to relearn the process. Everybody thinks about the process and everybody owns that, So as we discussed, we've had a few key members of staff transfer out after 8 or so years recently. Yeah. It'll be good for the new members of staff to really be embedded in that new system when we implement it, and they should own that system then. Yeah,
great. That's interesting. And Christine, is growth difficult sometimes? You were sort of intimating it was.
Yeah, but I'm like Troy's always more on the people side of things, and I'm always more on the organisational side of things. So from my point of view, it's always, again, it's the number crunching and when we had a big growth phase coming up, I had to sit down and think, how do I get more money, and then go through that process with the bank of getting the working capital financing and all, just getting that part. And then, of course, understanding that doesn't happen overnight. That's a months process to get that in place. And then working through all of that, working through the materials coming in and how are you going to pay for this, and just it's really when you have to kind of really drill down and I guess micromanage the processes a little bit more to make sure that everything goes through at the right phase, that people aren't spending on the wrong things, and that you're buying what you need to buy, and that done what you need to do for the bank. And it's that side of things that I always find hard to come through, or that's the challenging part, is because you have to see it coming to act accordingly and take the action. And I think that's where that role that I've played. Or when you see as Troy alluded to, that sometimes people kind of like lose their nerve, I guess, with things happening, that as the owner or as the manager, you need to sort of step into the role as needed and kind of bring that thing up or drag it along, get it going again, and make sure it doesn't fall over. Like, you can't just, like, whilst it's great to sort of empower people, there are times when you do need to just come in, step in and say, okay, no, we need to do this, get through that phase, and then it can kind of go back to normal again. And that's how I do things.
As a business, we prefer to empower people as we make sure there's no fails.
Exactly. It's like, I can't...
Let them fail and they'll learn the next time. It's like, no, let's never have a fail. But if we're seeing a bit of a wobble, let's do some extra training, support them a little bit more. Where some managers are very much, let them fail. I go, no, but we have to wear the brunt of an unhappy customer, the loss, everything. Let's always make sure it's right and just make sure we train the person better for the next event.
I think that's fascinating. And like, there's a lot of levers to pull as business owners, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, a bit of an analogy, it's not the best one, but I liken it a bit to, thinking about the weather, right? You've got the national weather forecast and you've got the local weather forecast. And you're kind of... There's some elements in that you can't really manage the temperature and influence it too much. But as a business owner, you've got to be attuned to both, right? And, I think what you were saying is you've got to map to a direction and improve over time, and you've got a view about where you want to invest, but then you've got to actually make sure that the numbers add up, and you can actually eat it sufficiently and invest in an incremental way as you're getting more demand.
It's also being smart about it because originally with the business, and as the business grew really for the first 7 or 8 years, we only made for Australian-only brands. The thing with Australian-only brands, pretty much apart from our own, now we've got some bigger Australian brands as well, a 1 tonne blend for them is huge.
Yeah.
So a lot of them are doing 400 kilo blends or 100 kilo blends of one flavour, and they might do 5 flavours in a range, and that's a 3 month supply for them. Our manual packers can pack out a 400 kilo blend in 12 to 15 minutes. Clean a baker's scoop, swab a baker's scoops, say it's clean, and start a different flavour.
Yeah, wow.
If we run that through an auto line, we're down for an hour and a half cleaning the auto line out to do a swab to start the next. We would be out of business after a week of running an auto line for such small things.
Yeah.
So we had to wait till we had enough large customers
to support the investment.
To support the investment, but also the time in cleaning and everything else. So we really mapped out how much that cost and what the impact would be on the total output for the day.
Yeah.
But obviously once we had 3 customers that were big enough to go through an auto filler, everybody's like, we want auto fillers. I'm like, and after we use them for 1 day, what do we do for all the rest of the time, guys? So it's those things where, as business owners, we don't always look at what everybody else in our industry does. We definitely, Christine will crunch the numbers down to how much it's costing us per person to screw a cap on. So
you got to know these things.
So when we make a move, the move is that well thought out, and we probably could have made the move 4 months earlier, but we know when we make the move, it's a required move.
Look, and I think listeners to the Let's Talk Business podcast will know that we often debate the issue of capital investment and the timing and strategy versus having the demand and growth. Different business owners have a different strategy. So there are some that will invest ahead and wait for it to come, so to speak. But it's a business defining moment in many small businesses. If it's got wrong, it can cause all sorts of tricky issues.
As you know, with a lot of equipment, if you don't use it often, it tends not to work very well.
Well, it costs,
it's funny,
it costs
equipment you run 24/7, 20 years later, is still running as good as the day you put it in. Equipment you turn on once every 3 months tends to have a lot of problems. That's
exactly right. Now, I want to focus on you two because you've each had a go at each other. So I think Christine said you're focused on people. And you said that Christine's focused on the cost of caps.
Not only caps. Not only caps. But
that was a compliment to Troy. That wasn't having a go at him.
I know that, Christine. But it's in that vein that I'd like to understand how you do work together, because you are, from the first time I met you both many years ago, it struck me that you were very different people in many respects. So how does that work in business? Like, is it a positive thing?
Yeah, I think it is, because
absolutely.
You always need a person who's going to, I suppose, advocate for a customer within reason.
Yep.
And you always need somebody that has to, within reason, say, we're losing money.
Advocate for the business, so
correct.
to speak. Yep.
So, and we find that middle ground, and within finding that middle ground and that little bit of gravel along the way, I will say these are my thoughts and justifications, because I'm very good at having a 5, 10, 15, 20 year strategy, even exit strategies, things like that. So I've already thought about, I'm very bad at writing them down on paper and sharing them with everybody. So somebody could ask me and I can actually lay out what I think till my retirement strategy is and where we should be and what's going to happen. And it'll probably happen that way because that's the way it's happened for the last 24 years. I go, so it's good to have that little bit of gravel. As Christine will say, our margins dropped from 24% to 16%. Is it really worth it for this size order? And it'll be that 2 week of, but the reason I'm doing it is for this reason and that reason and that reason. And she'll be like, oh, but what about this and what about, and we'll come to a comfortable understanding of, Christine will understand the strategy. And at times I might go back and just say to the customer, it's really not worth it for me. Can we meet somewhere here? We've crunched every number we can, and it's funny, within that, Christine will have given me enough economic justifications that I can normally go back to my Vietnam distributor or anything and say, I'll open book it for you and show you where I am, and I'll come back and say, oh, okay, I'll agree to that price. I didn't realise that's how tight it was.
So two sides actually gets a better result at the end of the day.
100%,
Yeah, because that's the thing, like it said, Troy has the patience to be able to go back and forth, whereas I'm a lot more black and white on things. That's, if that, I'm not an accountant, but there's a little bit of accountant.
You're not that bad, Christine.
No, I'm not. Thank goodness, because I've got a bit of technical and a bit of this, because I am across the board of majority of things, but I don't have that patience to kind of go the back and forth. I would just be like, nope. That's it, and I'll be sitting there just to try. Nope, and he'll be like talking and negotiating, and that's and that's why I said it as a compliment. It's very much a strength, but I think Troy, he trusts that if I tell him, that's it, then he knows the parameters, he knows where everything's at, and that's it's that we have our strengths in the different things. And it works because you can't be everything. You can't be. I don't know. Maybe some people are, they're unicorns, but from that business perspective, you need the person who's good at the detail. You need the person that's good at the big picture. You need the person that's good at the practical side. Like all businesses need that.
I love that. I think
But it's also with sales, James. When some countries take 2 years to register the products in because of their bureaucracy and stuff. By the time we've registered the products, we've worked on it for 2 years, I've gone to the country twice, we'll put so much work into it, it can be somewhat crushing to let go of that sale. So you do need another party involved in it that doesn't like the sales process or want the sales process to keep some stability to your thoughts on it, because sometimes it's hard to let go of the sale, so the sale becomes a bad deal and you still go, but I want to do the deal, I put 2 years into this, I want to do the deal, and you need somebody there saying this is a bad deal, just pull the plug. So it becomes somewhat, and I think everybody involved in sales would understand what I'm saying. Sometimes you work that hard to complete a sale it's hard to let go of a sale. So you need that voice of reason going, hey, this has become a bit silly.
Yeah, look, I really love the discussion we've just had, guys. I mean, you probably, dare I say, I don't know whether you take it for granted, but I don't think you do, actually. But, I mean, there's such a lot of trust and honesty to talk about each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I kind of see it. You're joking about it, but we all have our moments, right? And in business, and that's just how it is. But I think we assist a lot of joint shareholder businesses and family businesses, and there's a lot of personalities, egos, strengths, weaknesses. But where you can be transparent about, well, look, this is what I do well, but this is what I'm not so good about, but also recognising, as you just, with that example, Troy, that, part of what I do well is sales, but having another person from a different angle there makes me a better salesperson.
Yeah.
And that in a business owner's environment, I think is a real ingredient to success. Yeah. I enjoyed that discussion. I thought it's not about numbers really. It's just about dynamics, right?
Regardless of things failing, succeeding, the only time I'd say we get upset is when things don't succeed because we didn't put 100% into it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like we could have done something better and that's why it didn't succeed, then we get down on ourselves. We're like, hey, that's not on. But if something doesn't succeed because, there was a war in the country or there was a new government got voted and they changed all the regulation, was like, we literally got our regulations or we got our import certificate a week ago. New government got in and cancelled all imports to the country. That's out of our control. But, Chris and I say, what happened here? This was a large expense because we pay for the registration, we do this, we do that. And I'll be like, well, here was the strategy in that, but unfortunately a new government got in. She's fairly understanding of, well, nobody's seen that happening, So, the only time I suppose both of us will get down on ourselves is when we haven't followed something up enough or we haven't put the work in and you go, we could have done better there and that's the reason that this thing's failed.
But it's being honest with oneself, yeah? And look, are you a better business for having those 38 other customers that you're servicing on the making side? I'm asking that from the perspective of understanding where this market's going. Does that give you a different window into the market, or have you?
It actually does, and it gives us a strength because regardless of how big the business is and how good the business is, normally the discussion is from the hip and from the feeling. And, a good example is, we have meetings with our sales reps every week. And, we've gone through 3 months of the largest sales the company's ever had and 3 months worth of meetings saying how quiet the industry is and how nobody's buying. And I'm like, you have access to a full accounting suite where you run your own reports, so you're not checking your reports.
Yeah.
And that can be somewhat the same in the industry where, large chains that we deal with directly, we might make home brand from, things like that, will ring us and say, geez, Australian brands are really off the boil. And we're like, oh, we're up over 50% in making for Australian brands. You sure that's the case? And they might be checking it and go, oh, you're right. Actually, something's changed. So it gives us that perspective of what's honestly going on.
Yeah.
Because we might make stock largely in advance for our own brand, and we're happy to do that. And we have the confidence that it'll sell. A lot of the customers we deal with are reactive orderers.
Yes.
So if they're not selling the stock, they're not placing larger orders.
Yeah, I understand.
So when 95% of all of your customers continuously place larger orders more regularly, you know where the industry's going.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So and that's from that point of view, but obviously from the perspective of the volume that it allows us to do, the purchasing that comes along with that, and the price negotiations and everything that the team can do, it gives you a much a much bigger base to work from. Particularly with protein being our key ingredient and some of the amino acids, having that volume. The challenge, obviously, predicting far enough ahead because of importation and what people are going to be making and everything like that. But then having the fact that people know that we're going to use the volume, and then they will come to us when there's better pricing, we kind of know what's going on in the industry a lot before other people, because we built the relationship on the supplier side of things, which is a lot harder to do if you only need, a fraction of the volume that you need. And of course, it's all of those customers that go together to give us that volume, and the different outlets. Because as I said, every customer has its own special ratio of proteins and everything. So it kind of spreads across, the materials that you're using. There's obviously things in common, but one customer might have more of the WPI and someone else more of the WPC, and you sort of, you're balancing everything out like that. So it's a that level there, but it's also the giving us that ability to get more leverage on the materials, packaging, and then also just things that you get to try, like you get to sort of offer them a material or something that maybe we don't want to do in our brand, but we can you can offer it to one of our customers and see if they want to pick it up and stuff. So
when it comes to our brand too, that's funny because people we make for will discuss with reps for International Protein their brand, and they'll be like, "Why are you discussing this with me?" And I go, "Oh, don't you know that you guys make the brand? We have total separation from on the road staff, and then obviously the staff that work here at head office get to see the brands." But one thing we do get to see, because marketing and social media approach to marketing can make things appear to be all selling very, very well, which aren't. We might make new exciting things for 3 or 4 companies and see them fail, even though the companies are marketed well.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with their discount structure. There's nothing wrong with their approach. Their footprint's good, and our reps will hammer us. We've got to launch this. We've got to lose it. Mate, we might pump the brakes for a couple of months of that, because 3 companies that I feel are marketed awesomely and the products are good have just had these same products fail. They don't even know that we make them. So it might look like it's going well, but we might sit back on that. We also get to see really where the industry sits for what the demand is for certain sectors, whether it be just WPC, whey protein concentrate products, WPI products, because when you make for so many brands,
you see a bigger picture.
You see a bigger picture of really what dominates what they have to reorder quickly.
That's very interesting. There's a bit of a big question, and it's one of my last, but health, fitness, lifestyle, body image. Where's that all going in the context of the products and services that you guys provide, but also, I guess, your perspective, having both been very successful bodybuilders of your own right? That, which is, only a part of that big universe that I just spoke about. But where's it going?
Look, I think, and every state will have an equivalent to this, if not 10. If you go to Hope Island on a Saturday or Sunday morning, you will see 700 people in their 60s to 70s riding $14,000 Kevlar bikes in shape up and down the road. I think people being healthy for longer. I think the new 60 is the old 40, if that makes sense, and so on. I think people want to stay mobile as a whole, because of computers, phones, technology, will become more sedentary.
Yes.
People will put more of a focus on moving more. Yeah. So, active aging is something huge. That's for that group, and they still take supplements, the nutraceuticals, fish oils, everything like that, and protein powders with that, and basic science is doing the marketing there more than what we are.
Yes.
I think when it comes to the younger crowd, the aesthetic look, so that has something. Social media has been great for our industry. Maybe not great for the whole world, but for our industry, people wanting to look good on social media, have a set of abs, look good on the beach. Sports supplements has definitely benefited that, and that doesn't look like it's
going
changing.
away.
No.
The marketing of it as well. Like, I think even one of the stores was saying that because of TikTok and creatine, because creatine, it went to probably one of the highest prices that we've seen during just post-COVID. Pricing was ridiculous, and I had never seen sales as high. And we were just sitting there going, this can't be happening. There was not enough product. Everyone wanted it, and they were paying 4 times what they'd been paying 6 months prior, because with, coming out of COVID and then TikTok and this, everyone's saying you need to take this supplement, and just how influenced the younger crowd actually is. So they were walking in asking for creatine. Shops weren't needing to sell it to them. Oh, have you thought about using this with your protein powder or doing an upsell? People were just knowing about it. So there's more information around. And I think with the information, then the connection between protein and my body, the gym, and I need it. And we're not having to market as heavily as, in the past, because it's just that organic. People don't want to miss out. People don't want to be the one who's not there. Everyone's, filming their gym workouts. Everyone's trying to maximize that. And I think the difference too is that in our age group, the hardcore bodybuilders, they kept on training, but the people that were in the gym would get a family, and then all of a sudden everything would stop, and then then life would take over. The younger generation's not letting that happen, in that they're cruising through with it. It's like, no, this is my priority. This is what I do. I'll have kids, but that will fit in with what I'm doing. So there's not the drop off that there was back in our day. And whereas it was the hardcore that went through, and then as Troy said, the people wanting to be active longer and have a meaningful, functional life, not being from 60, okay, on medication and hip replacement and all that kind of stuff that our parents dealt with. We all want to be able to do everything that we did at 20 when we're 70. So we're going to be working hard. So it's kind of, there's still obviously groups of the population that aren't buying into it at all. But the majority of people, everyone wants to have a better quality of life. Everyone wants to, get more function and more value out of their life.
You also have to look at Australia when it comes to buying protein sources that are clean. Well, when I say clean, it's not that any protein source isn't clean. I should say low fat for high protein, so low cholesterol risk, good for your health and that. Protein source meat in Australia is hideously expensive. And anybody knows that. If you go and buy a double chicken breast anywhere or anything like that, you're probably up for $28. $1.70 serve of protein will give you the same amount of protein as what's in that chicken breast. So we're lucky in Australia to have a sports nutrition company, because a lot of people who say, I want to take in 250 grams of protein a day and I want to be able to carry it in the car, and it's not only is it serviceable and easy, but it's a tenth of the price of what you'd buy chicken, steak or anything else for. Yeah. And meat at the moment, it's just
going up and up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, over that sort of period from the establishment of your business, in some respects the market was quite small and defined in particular segments around bodybuilding and hardcore gym goers, and if anything the market's become almost mainstream.
100%. I say this to people, I said, the amount of people that are in gyms, not necessarily hardcore weight trainers, but even years ago you used to walk into a gym and 2 out of every 20 people would have been using a supplement like a protein powder. Everybody had eggs and steak and stuff like that. Now if you went in there, 18 out of every 20 people, regardless of hardcore training, train once a week, train 5 times a week, will be using supplements. So not only has the people in the gyms expanded 100-fold, but the people who think they have to use a supplement or use a supplement within the gym has also expanded.
And even from the nutritional perspective, without even talking about the activity perspective, when you look at the macros, essentially there's 3 macros. You've got fat, protein and carbohydrate. So with all of the metabolic damage and overconsumption of carbohydrate, and carbohydrate being so easy to get, and people trying to eliminate or reduce the carbohydrate, and then obviously fat has its own connotations, and some people follow higher fat diets, but protein's the one nutrient that everyone agrees the older you get, the more you need to have to stop basic muscle wastage. It's the nutrient that doesn't have an impact on your blood sugar or your cholesterol, or it's a protein powder, I should say. But protein itself it's kind of like the neutral macro. It's for growth, it's for recovery. Our body's made up of enzymes, it's made up of skin, it's made up of components that need protein. Like protein is essential to life. But it's the one where I think the traditional ways of working out the diet have underestimated how much protein people need. And the general consensus is that a healthier diet has a higher percentage of protein. And it used to be very easy to get, what you needed for protein out of having, steak once a day. But now people realise that was so grossly underestimated. And as Troy said, it's expensive, but also, do you want to eat steak 6 times a day or 5 times a day or however many times you have a meal, 3 meals, 2 snacks? You should actually be having protein at every one of those occasions. And how do you do that? Protein powder is a really, really great way to do it. Otherwise, you'd be either cooking all day or carrying lunch boxes around or, it's just not practical. So it's a very, very practical way of meeting those needs. But there's so much publicity, not just around the gyms and that, but just in the general speak of how do you control your weight? Oh, eat higher protein. It stops you from feeling hungry. It doesn't mess with your blood sugar like too much carbohydrate does. And that change as well. And again, so much more nutritional knowledge coming through with the younger generation that wasn't available to our generation. Our generation's now going and learning about it, but the younger people, they know a lot more about nutrition than what we knew at that age.
It's exciting times, isn't it? For health, fitness and well-being, but also for international protein and prestige blending, right? Because like any business, you've gone through, I'm sure, ups and downs, but you've built a platform and a brand that's well known. I mean, the other thing you must be very proud about is not only being homegrown Australian, but also having a successful export facility and being known in a range, 21 markets, right?
Look, and we definitely are. And because as I say, I sort of grew part of my business personality through the business, if that makes sense. The export for me especially, I was at a stage in the business where I wouldn't say, I come in and do my work every day, but I wasn't overly enjoying working in the business as much as on the business. Where the export for me, I land in a new country, find a distributor, I spend a bit of time with him, I go visit new accounts, we sign those accounts up, you get that, we got the first sale, high five, get in the car, like you got the sales tingles. The export for side of that has reinvigorated, I suppose, my mental energy for the business a little bit, because we did go through probably 5 or 6 years where the business had grown to quite a large business, but you're just rocking up every day, HR meetings, management meetings, answering emails, answering the same email the next day. You go, I answered this yesterday, this is, so it can drag you down a little bit, because whilst you're kicking a lot of goals and the accountant's definitely smiling at you every time you walk past him, as a business owner, that's not normally what you're focused on as much as you think business goals, growth, things like that. So for me, the export side of things, definitely, I love landing in a new country. Not only do I get to see the country, they always probably show you the best parts of the country, as people do when you're the guest.
But I guess you're showing them your brand, right?
Yeah, and that's it. You get off there, you see how enthused they are. You walk into a shop, and through years of selling, you see the resistance, and you've already got, I suppose, your house of answers built, where you jump in and you help the guy and you actually get a sale, and you get back in the car and, your distributor will be like, he was going to say no, and then he said yes, and he took an order. I'm like, yeah, that's why you got to do this and this and this and that,
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Chris J?
Yeah. And from my perspective, it's like some of our newer flavours that we've done have been at request of the export partners. So again, there's only so many things you can do within Australia, and Australia's palate is a certain way, but we have the mango flavour, and again, with the population of certain, countries growing within Australia, then that's also kind of taking off. But 20 years ago, we never would have launched a mango flavour because, oh my God, who was going to eat that? And then what did we just do, a milk tea flavour?
Yeah, so we're very, very strong in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, so that's taking the taste good mantra to the next level, isn't it, really?
Yep.
Christine and Troy, I really appreciate you joining us on Let's Talk Business podcast today. You've been very generous in not just talking about the high level, but also the low level and the bits in between. And it's been fascinating just listening to how you've developed and built this business to one that's a successful Australian business. So thank you very much for joining us.
I appreciate it, James.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Say it's easy to talk about things that you like. Say that it is actually our passion and something that we enjoy doing. So
well, and that shows. Look, the energy, like it's just it's exciting, guys, and we know it's not all, champagne every day, but it's a credit to you to see what you've put in place. It really is.
No, and as we discussed just before we come on camera, James, really the key is energy levels.
Yeah.
If you keep your energy up, your excitement's up, people feed off that. You can answer questions quick. Don't let yourself get weighed down. Don't dodge things. Just keep your energy level high.
Yeah.
And life doesn't actually have to be that hard.
Life will be all right.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, what a pleasure it was to have some time with Troy and Christine from International Protein and Prestige Blending. An Aussie born and bred business with sports supplements, making them and distributing them across Australia and to 21 countries around the world. Over 2 decades old, an exciting business and some fascinating insights about understanding the market, investing but waiting for demand, managing the growth, and trying to be a point of difference in terms of taste and quality and understanding the customer base and what's changing. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram at JamesC_Price. And if you're up for improving your business, gaining access to knowledge, insights, our team, and consultations, join our online membership portal. Visit jpabusiness.com.au.